My name is Amira. I am 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, a security guard at Riverside Shopping Center followed me through every single store I entered. He stood outside fitting rooms. He watched me at checkout counters. He made me feel like a criminal in front of dozens of people, all because I wore a hijab. But by that same evening, he was the one being escorted out. His job was gone. The mall manager apologized to me with tears in her eyes, and the security company issued a formal statement about discrimination. But this story doesn't start in that mall corridor with everyone staring. It starts that Saturday morning when I woke up, excited, when I had planned a rare day off just for myself, when I thought I would finally find the perfect outfit for my sister's wedding. I had no idea that by 2 p.m., I would be holding my phone with shaking hands, recording evidence of something I had experienced my whole life, but never been able to prove. If you have ever been followed in a store because of how you look, this story is for you. If you have ever felt eyes on you for no reason except your race or religion, you will understand exactly how I felt that day. And if you want to see what happens when someone finally collects the evidence and refuses to stay silent, make sure you subscribe to Revenge Leader, because what you're about to hear is not made up. It's not exaggerated. It happened to me 3 weeks ago, and it could happen to anyone. The difference is, I didn't just walk away angry. I didn't just complain to my friends and family. I made sure there were consequences, real consequences. So stay with me, because this story will show you that standing up for yourself is not just brave, it's necessary, and it works. And by the end, you'll see exactly why staying silent was never an option. I work as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. My job is mostly remote. I spend most days at home in my little apartment. My cat is my main coworker. My meetings happen over video calls. So when I do get a day off, I try to make it special. I plan it out. I look forward to it. That Saturday was supposed to be one of those days. My younger sister Layla was getting married in 2 weeks. She had asked me to be her maid of honor. I was so proud, so excited for her. But I needed an outfit, something beautiful, something that would photograph well, something that made me feel confident. I had been saving money for this. $400 set aside specifically for this shopping trip. I didn't shop for myself often. This was a treat, a rare moment where I could focus on me. I had no idea how that day would turn out. I woke up around 8 a.m. that Saturday. The sun was already streaming through my bedroom curtains. I made myself coffee. I sat at my kitchen table planning my day. I knew exactly which mall I wanted to visit. Riverside Shopping Center. It was about 20 minutes from my apartment. It had all the stores I needed. Department stores, boutiques, places with formal wear. I finished my coffee and got ready. I showered, I did my makeup, carefully. Not too much, just enough to feel polished. Then I chose my hijab. I have dozens of them, different colors, different fabrics. That day I picked my favorite, a soft pink one with small white flowers embroidered along the edges. It was beautiful. It made me happy. I paired it with jeans and a cream-colored sweater. I looked in the mirror. I felt good. I felt confident. I had no reason to think this day would be anything but normal. I grabbed my purse. I checked my wallet to make sure my debit card was there. $400 in my account, ready to spend. I drove to Riverside Shopping Center. The drive took exactly 18 minutes. I listened to music. I sang along. I felt light, happy. When I arrived, the parking lot was packed. It was a Saturday afternoon. Everyone was out shopping. I circled for a few minutes before finding a spot. I parked. I locked my car. I walked toward the main entrance. The mall was huge. 3 stories, probably 100 stores. I could see people walking in and out. Families, teenagers, couples. Everyone looked relaxed. Everyone looked like they belonged. I walked through the automatic doors. The cool air conditioning hit my face. The mall was bright, clean. Music played softly from overhead speakers. I pulled out my phone and checked the mall directory. I decided to start on the second floor. That's where most of the formal wear stores were located. I took the escalator up to the second floor. I walked past a few stores, window shopping, getting a feel for what was available. Then I saw a department store. It was one of the big ones, the kind that sells everything from shoes to jewelry to dresses. I walked inside. The store was busy. Sales associates helped customers. People browsed racks of clothing. Everything seemed normal. I headed straight to the formal wear section. I wanted to see what dresses they had. Maybe something elegant. Maybe something in navy or emerald green. I started browsing. I pulled a few dresses off the rack, held them up against myself, checked the price tags. Some were too expensive. Some weren't my style. But a few looked promising. I draped them over my arm. I decided to try them on. The fitting rooms were at the back of the store. I walked toward them. That's when I first noticed him. There was a security guard standing near the fitting room entrance. He was a tall man, maybe in his 40s. He wore the standard uniform, black pants, white shirt, a badge on his chest. He was standing with his arms crossed. His eyes were on me. Not casual looking, staring. I felt it immediately, that prickle on the back of your neck, when you know someone is watching you. But I told myself I was overreacting. Security guards stand near fitting rooms. That's normal. That's part of their job. People steal clothes all the time. He was probably just doing his job. I walked past him into the fitting room area. The attendant counted my items, 5 dresses. She handed me a number tag. I went into a stall. I locked the door. I tried on each dress. One was too tight, one was too loose, one was actually perfect. I stood there looking at myself in the mirror. The dress was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Something felt off. I changed back into my regular clothes. I hung the dresses back on their hangers. I walked out of the fitting room. The security guard was still there, in the exact same spot, still watching. I handed the dresses to the attendant. I told her I needed to think about it. She smiled. She said no problem. I walked away. But as I walked through the store toward the exit, I glanced back. The security guard was following me. Not close, but following. He stayed about 20 feet behind me. I walked faster. My heart started beating harder. I left the department store and stepped back into the mall corridor. I stopped at a bench, pretended to check my phone. I looked up. The security guard had stopped too. He was standing near a pillar, looking at me. Or maybe I was imagining it. Maybe he just happened to be there. I took a deep breath. I told myself to calm down. I decided to go into another store. There was a boutique across the corridor, the kind with trendy clothes in the window display. I walked toward it. I didn't even look back. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I walked into the boutique. It was smaller than the department store, more intimate. Only a few other customers inside. I started browsing through a rack of blouses, but I couldn't focus. Something kept pulling my attention to the window. I glanced toward the entrance. My stomach dropped. The security guard was standing outside, right outside the boutique entrance. He wasn't even pretending to do anything else. He was just standing there, looking inside, looking at me. Other shoppers walked past him. He didn't look at them, only me. I felt my chest tighten. My hands started to feel cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. He was following me. But why? What had I done? I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't acted suspicious. I was just shopping, just existing. I tried to keep browsing. I pulled a shirt off the rack. I held it up. But I wasn't really seeing it. All I could see was him, standing there, watching me through the glass. A sales associate approached me. She asked if I needed help. Her voice was quieter than normal, almost nervous. She glanced toward the window, toward the guard, then back at me. I saw it in her eyes. She thought I was a criminal. She thought the guard was there because of something I did. I felt my face get hot. My throat got tight. I put the shirt back on the rack. I told her no thank you. I walked toward the back of the store, away from the window, away from his eyes. But I could still feel him out there, still watching, still following. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I knew what this was. I had felt it before, but never like this, never this obvious, never this humiliating. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. I stood in the back corner of that boutique. My heart was pounding. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to leave, wanted to go straight to my car, wanted to drive home and forget this ever happened. That's what I had always done before. When a store employee followed me too closely, when someone clutched their purse tighter when I walked by, when I got randomly selected for extra screening at airports. I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But something was different this time. Maybe it was because my sister's wedding was coming up. Maybe it was because I had been looking forward to this day. Maybe it was because I was just tired. Tired of feeling like I had to apologize for existing. Tired of being treated like a threat when I was just trying to live my life. I took a deep breath. I decided I wasn't leaving. Not yet. I needed to know for sure. I needed to test my theory. If he was really following me, I would prove it. I walked toward the boutique entrance. I didn't buy anything. I just walked out. I stepped into the mall corridor. I didn't look at the security guard. I pretended I didn't see him. I walked slowly, casually, like I had all the time in the world. I headed toward the next store, a shoe store about 30 feet away. I could feel him behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know. I could sense it, the way you sense someone's presence, that awareness in your spine. I reached the shoe store entrance. I paused. I looked at the window display. Then I turned my head slightly, just enough to see behind me. He was there, 20 feet back, walking at the exact same pace I had been walking. His eyes locked on me. When I stopped, he stopped. He pretended to look at his phone, but his eyes kept darting up, checking on me, making sure I was still in his sight. My stomach twisted. This was real. This was intentional. He was hunting me. I walked into the shoe store. It was bright inside. White walls, rows of shoes displayed on clear shelves. There were maybe 6 or 7 other customers. A young couple looking at sneakers, a woman trying on heels, a teenage girl with her mother. Everyone looked relaxed, normal. I walked to a display of sandals. I picked one up, pretended to examine it. But I was watching the entrance, watching for him. He appeared within seconds. He didn't come inside. He stood right at the entrance, in full view, arms crossed, staring. The couple noticed him. They looked at me, then at him, then at each other. They moved to a different section, away from me. The woman trying on heels glanced over. Her expression changed. She looked uncomfortable. The teenage girl whispered something to her mother. Her mother pulled her closer. I felt it like a wave, the shift in energy. Everyone in that store now saw me as dangerous, as someone who needed watching. The security guard had marked me, and everyone was reading his signal. I left the shoe store. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from anger, from humiliation. But I wasn't done testing. I needed more proof. I walked to another store, a clothing store that sold casual wear. I went straight to the back, to the fitting room area. I asked the attendant if I could try on a jacket I hadn't even picked up yet. She looked confused, but nodded. I went into a fitting room. I closed the door. I didn't lock it. I just stood there, breathing, trying to calm myself. I counted to 30 in my head. Then I looked down, at the gap between the door and the floor. I could see shadows, feet. Someone was standing right outside my fitting room door. I knew those shoes. Black boots, security guard boots. He had followed me into the store, followed me to the fitting room, and now he was standing there, waiting, watching. I felt trapped. The walls felt like they were closing in. My breathing got faster. This wasn't just profiling. This was harassment. I stayed in that fitting room for another minute. I needed to compose myself. I needed to think clearly. Then I opened the door. He was right there, less than 3 feet away. We made eye contact. He didn't look away, didn't look embarrassed. He just stared at me, cold, blank, like I was a problem he was managing. I walked past him. My shoulder almost brushed his arm. I walked back through the store. Other customers were watching now. A woman with kind eyes looked at me, really looked at me. I saw sympathy there. She knew what was happening. She could see it. But she didn't say anything. No one ever does. Another shopper, a mother with 2 kids, pulled her children away from me. She put herself between them and me, like I was contagious, like I was dangerous. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of him. I walked out of that store and into the main mall corridor. I stopped walking. I just stood there, in the middle of the walkway. People flowed around me, shopping bags in their hands, smiles on their faces, living their normal Saturday. And here I was, being followed like a criminal, for doing nothing, for buying nothing, for simply existing while Muslim. The security guard exited the store behind me. He stopped too, about 15 feet away, just standing there, watching. I turned around. I looked directly at him. Our eyes met. I didn't look away this time. My heart was hammering, but my voice came out steady. I said, "Can I help you with something?" He didn't flinch. He said, "Just doing my job, ma'am." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he had said those words 1,000 times before. I said, "Your job is to follow me?" He said, "Random security check." Random. The word hung in the air between us. There was nothing random about this. I turned away from him. I walked a few more steps. My mind was made up. I wasn't going to let this continue. I wasn't going to let him win. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking. But I unlocked it. I opened my camera app. I switched it to video. I held the phone up, and I started recording. I walked slowly through the mall corridor. The camera was pointing ahead of me, capturing everything. The stores, the people, the normal Saturday shopping scene. Then I walked into another store, a home goods store. I browsed for maybe 2 minutes, touched a few throw pillows, looked at some candles. Then I walked back out. I held my phone casually, like I was just checking messages. But the camera was recording, and when I exited that store, I captured exactly what I knew I would. The security guard, following me, again. He was there, 20 feet behind me, like clockwork, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I kept recording. I walked to the next store, a bookstore. I went inside, browsed the bestseller table, picked up a novel, put it down, walked back out. 3 minutes total. And there he was, still following, still watching. I had it on video now. Multiple instances, multiple stores, the same guard, the same pattern. I stopped in the corridor. I turned around. This time I held my phone up, openly, obviously. The camera pointed right at him. He saw it. His expression changed, just slightly, a flicker of uncertainty. I walked toward him, not aggressive, just direct. I stopped about 6 feet away. I said, "Why are you following me?" He looked at the camera, then at me. He said, "I'm not following you." I said, "I have been in 6 stores. You've been outside or inside every single one. Explain that." He shifted his weight. He said, "You're acting suspicious." The words hit me like a slap. Suspicious. I said, "How? How am I acting suspicious?" He didn't answer right away. He looked uncomfortable now. Other people were starting to notice, starting to watch. A small crowd was forming. Not obvious, but people were slowing down, pretending to look at their phones, listening. He finally said, "Just following protocol." I kept my voice calm, steady. I said, "What protocol requires you to follow one person for over an hour?" He said, "Mall security has the right to monitor anyone." I said, "Anyone? Or just me? I've been watching. You haven't followed anyone else. Just me." His jaw tightened. He said, "I don't have to explain my job to you." I said, "You do when you're harassing me." The word hung there. Harassment. He looked angry now. He reached for his radio. He pressed the button. He said into it, "I need a supervisor. I have a situation." A situation. That's what I was to him. Not a person, not a customer. A situation. I kept recording. My phone was still pointed at him, capturing everything. We stood there in the corridor, him with his radio, me with my phone. People were definitely watching now. I could hear whispers, see people taking out their own phones. Some were recording too. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely powerful. Because I had evidence. I had proof. This wasn't just my word against his anymore. Within 2 minutes, another security person arrived. This one was different. A woman, older, maybe in her 50s. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun. She wore the same uniform, but her face looked kind, professional. She approached us. She looked at the male guard, then at me. She said, "What's going on here?" The guard spoke first. He said, "This woman is acting suspicious. She's been going in and out of stores, not buying anything, just looking around." The female supervisor looked at me. She said, "Ma'am, is there a problem?" I held up my phone. I said, "Yes, this guard has been following me for over an hour, through every store. I have it on video." The female supervisor's expression changed. She looked at my phone, then at the male guard. She said, "You've been following her?" He said, "I was conducting routine surveillance." She said, "For an hour?" He didn't answer. She turned to me. She said, "Ma'am, would you be willing to come to our security office? I'd like to review what happened." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just leave, to go home, to end this nightmare. But another part of me knew this was important. If I walked away now, nothing would change. He would do this to someone else tomorrow, next week, next month. I said, "Yes, I'll come to your office." She nodded. She looked at the guard. She said, "You two, let's go." We walked through the mall, all three of us. People stared. I felt like I was being arrested, like I was the criminal. But I kept my head up. I held my phone tight in my hand. The video was still there. The proof was still there. That's all that mattered. We took an elevator to the 3rd floor, then walked down a back corridor, away from the stores, away from the shoppers. The walls were plain white, no decorations, just functional. We reached a door marked security. The supervisor used a key card. The door clicked open. Inside was a small office. Desks with computer monitors. Screens showing camera feeds from around the mall. 2 other security staff members were there. They looked up when we entered. The supervisor pointed to a small room off to the side. She said, "In here, please." It was a conference room. A table, 4 chairs, nothing else. We all sat down. Me on one side, the guard on the other. The supervisor at the head of the table. She looked at me. She said, "Can you tell me exactly what happened today?" I took a breath. I started from the beginning. From the moment I entered the first store. From the moment I first noticed him watching me. I spoke clearly, calmly. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. When I finished talking, the supervisor turned to the guard. She said, "Is this accurate?" He shifted in his seat. He said, "I was doing my job. She was acting suspicious." She said, "Define suspicious." He said, "Going in and out of stores, not buying anything, just looking around." The supervisor stared at him. She said, "That's called shopping." He said nothing. She said, "Did you see her attempt to steal anything?" He said, "No, but..." She cut him off. She said, "Did you see her damage any property?" He said, "No." She said, "Did you receive any complaints about her from store employees?" He said, "No." She leaned back in her chair. She said, "Then why were you following her?" He looked uncomfortable. He said, "She just seemed off." The supervisor's face hardened. She said, "Ma'am, you mentioned you have video. May I see it?" I unlocked my phone. I opened the video. I handed it to her. She pressed play. I watched her face as she watched the screen. Her expression grew more serious with each passing second. The video showed everything. Me walking through the mall, entering stores, browsing, exiting, and in every single shot, the guard was there, following, watching. The timestamp showed it clearly. Over an hour of footage, store after store, the same pattern. The supervisor watched the entire thing. When it ended, she looked at the guard. She said, "This is unacceptable." He said, "I was just being thorough." She said, "Thorough? You followed this woman through 6 stores. You stood outside fitting rooms. You made her feel unsafe. That's not thorough. That's harassment." He started to protest. She held up her hand. She said, "Wait here." She stood up. She looked at me. She said, "Ma'am, would you mind waiting here for a moment? I need to check our camera system." I nodded. She left the room. The guard and I sat in silence. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table. I could see his jaw working. He was angry. But I didn't care. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I had the truth on my side. The supervisor came back 5 minutes later. She was carrying a tablet. She sat down. She said, "I've reviewed our mall security footage from today." She turned the tablet toward me. The screen showed multiple camera angles, time-stamped, from different locations throughout the mall. She pressed play on the first one. It showed me entering the mall, walking toward the escalator. Normal, nothing suspicious. Then it showed the guard. He was standing near the entrance. He saw me enter. His head turned. He watched me walk away. Then he started following me. The next clip showed me in the department store, browsing dresses, acting like any other customer. The guard was visible in the background, always watching, always there. The supervisor played clip after clip. Each one showed the same thing: me shopping normally, him following obsessively. She paused the footage. She said, "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. What happened to you today should never have happened." She turned the tablet toward the guard. She said, "Look at this." She played more footage. This time it showed other shoppers, a teenage boy with a backpack walking through stores. The guard ignored him. A woman with a large shopping bag that looked overstuffed. The guard didn't even glance at her. A man in a hoodie acting nervously near the jewelry counter. The guard walked right past him. Then the footage showed me again, just walking, just existing, and the guard's attention immediately locked on me. The pattern was undeniable. The supervisor said, "You ignored actual suspicious behavior, but you followed her for over an hour. Why?" The guard said nothing. His face was red now. She said, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Why did you single her out?" He finally looked up. He said quietly, "I don't know." But we all knew. Everyone in that room knew. He didn't have to say it. The evidence said it for him. He followed me because of how I looked, because of my hijab, because of his assumptions, because of his bias. The supervisor set the tablet down. She looked at me. She said, "Ma'am, I am deeply sorry for what you experienced today. This behavior does not represent the values of Riverside Shopping Center. It does not represent our security team, and it will not be tolerated." She turned to the guard. She said, "You're suspended, effective immediately. I'm reporting this to our security company, and I'll be recommending termination." His eyes went wide. He said, "You can't do that." She said, "I absolutely can. You violated our harassment policy. You violated our non-discrimination policy, and you made a customer feel unsafe in our mall." He stood up. He said, "This is ridiculous. I was doing my job." She stood up too. She said, "Your job is to keep people safe, not to target them, not to profile them. You're done here. Hand over your radio and your badge." He stared at her. For a moment, I thought he might argue, but he didn't. He unclipped his radio. He unpinned his badge. He put them on the table. Then he walked out, without another word, without looking at me. The door closed behind him. The supervisor sat back down. She looked exhausted. She said, "Ma'am, I need to call our mall manager. She needs to hear about this directly." I nodded. She picked up the desk phone. She dialed an extension. Someone answered. She said, Sarah, I need you in the security office now. We have a serious situation. She hung up. We waited in silence. I felt drained. The adrenaline was wearing off. My hands had stopped shaking, but I felt heavy, tired, like I had just run a marathon. Within 3 minutes, the door opened. A woman walked in. She was in her late 40s, well-dressed, professional. She had dark hair and worried eyes. The supervisor said, "Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name." I said, "Amira." Sarah looked at me. She said, "I'm Sarah Chen. I'm the general manager here. Can you please tell me what happened?" So I told the story again, from the beginning. Every detail, every store, every humiliating moment. Sarah listened without interrupting. Her face grew paler with each sentence. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost shaking. She said, "Amira, I am so sorry." She looked at the supervisor. She said, "Show me the footage." The supervisor handed her the tablet. Sarah watched the video I had recorded. Then she watched the mall security footage. She watched all of it. When she finished, she set the tablet down. She covered her face with her hands for a moment. Then she looked at me. There were tears in her eyes. She said, "I have worked in retail for 25 years. I have managed this mall for 8 years. And this is one of the worst things I have seen." She took a breath. She said, "You came here to shop, to find something special for your sister's wedding. And instead you were harassed, humiliated, treated like a criminal. That is unacceptable. That is wrong. And I am ashamed that it happened in my mall." I felt my own eyes getting wet, not from sadness, from relief, from validation. Someone in authority was finally saying what I needed to hear. This wasn't my fault. This wasn't in my head. This was real. And it was wrong. Sarah pulled a tissue from a box on the table. She dabbed her eyes. She said, "I want you to know what actions I'm taking. First, that security guard will never work in this mall again. I'm contacting his employer right now to ensure his termination is processed tonight." She pulled out her phone. She started typing an email right there in front of me. She said, "Second, I'm launching a full review of our security practices. Every guard will undergo mandatory bias training. We're implementing new protocols for surveillance. And we're creating a clear reporting system for incidents like this." She kept typing. She said, "Third, I want to compensate you for this horrible experience. I'm issuing you a full refund for any purchases you intended to make today, plus a gift card, plus a personal letter of apology from our corporate office." She looked up at me. She said, "But I know that's not enough. Money doesn't fix what happened. So I want to ask you, what would make this right? What do you need from us?" I sat there thinking, what did I need? What would actually make this right? The truth was, nothing could erase what happened. Nothing could take back the humiliation, the fear, the anger. But maybe something good could come from it. I looked at Sarah. I said, "I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. I want real change, not just promises." She nodded. She said, "Absolutely. What specifically would you like to see?" I said, "I want written confirmation that the guard has been terminated. I want proof that the training is happening, and I want a direct line to you. So if this happens again, to me or anyone else, there's someone who will actually listen." Sarah wrote everything down. She said, "Done. All of it. You'll have my personal cell phone number, my email, and I'll send you monthly updates on our security training progress." She paused. She said, "Is it okay if I ask what you do for work?" I said, "I'm a graphic designer." She said, "Would you be willing to help us design materials for the training? Paid, of course. I think your perspective would be invaluable." I was surprised by the offer, but I said yes, because this was bigger than just me now. This was about change, real, lasting change. Sarah made more calls right there in the office. She called the security company. I heard her voice, firm, angry. She told them exactly what happened. She told them the guard was terminated effective immediately. She told them if they wanted to keep their contract with the mall, every single one of their employees would undergo retraining. She hung up. She looked at me. She said, "It's done. He's been officially terminated. He won't work security anywhere in this mall chain." Then she called corporate headquarters. She explained the situation to someone higher up. She said my name multiple times. She said, "We failed her. We need to do better." When she hung up, she said, "Corporate is sending you a formal letter of apology, and they're reviewing security protocols at all 43 of our mall locations nationwide." I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my bad day anymore. This was about preventing thousands of bad days for other people. Sarah walked me out of the security office. We took the elevator back down to the main shopping level. She walked me all the way to my car. She said, "Amira, I know today was traumatic. Please take care of yourself. If you need anything, call me, anytime." She handed me her business card. She had written her personal cell number on the back. I took it. I said, "Thank you for listening, for believing me. You have no idea how rare that is." She said, "I'm sorry that's true. But I'm glad you spoke up. I'm glad you didn't just leave quietly." I got in my car. I sat there for a moment. My hands were on the steering wheel. I was shaking again. But this time it was different. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was release. Like something that had been coiled tight inside me for years had finally let go. I drove home. I barely remember the drive. My mind was replaying everything, every moment, every word. When I got home, I sat on my couch. My cat jumped into my lap. I just sat there, petting her, trying to process what had happened. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Sarah. The subject line said, "Formal apology and action plan." I opened it. It was long, detailed. She had already typed up everything we discussed: the guard's termination, the training program, the policy changes. She attached a letter from corporate. I opened that too. It was addressed to me personally. It apologized for the discrimination I experienced. It acknowledged that racial and religious profiling had occurred. It outlined the steps they were taking to prevent it from happening again. It was signed by the Vice President of Operations. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my sister. She called me immediately. She said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I said, "I am now." She said, "I'm so proud of you. So proud that you didn't stay quiet." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. Over the next few days, Sarah stayed in constant contact. She sent me updates, photos of the new training materials being developed, a schedule of when each security staff member would complete bias training. She also sent me a package. Inside was a handwritten apology letter from her, a $500 gift card to the mall, and information about the design consulting project she wanted me to help with. The pay was generous, more than I usually charged. But more than that, I felt like my experience was being valued, like my pain was being transformed into something useful. I started working on the training materials. I created infographics about unconscious bias, about what racial profiling looks like in retail settings, about the impact it has on customers. It was hard to work on. It brought up a lot of emotions. But it also felt healing, like I was taking something terrible and using it to educate people, to prevent future harm. A week after the incident, my sister sent me a news article. A local reporter had somehow heard about what happened. They had reached out to the mall for comment. The mall had issued a public statement. It didn't name me, but it acknowledged that a customer had been racially profiled by security. It outlined the actions they had taken in response. It included quotes from Sarah about their commitment to diversity and inclusion. The article was shared on social media. Comments started pouring in. Other people shared their own stories. A Black man said he had been followed in the same mall 2 months earlier. A Latina woman said security had accused her of shoplifting when she hadn't taken anything. An Asian teenager said he was stopped and searched for no reason. The pattern was clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. This had been happening for a long time, to many people. But most of them had stayed silent. Most of them had walked away. I was just the first one with enough evidence to force accountability. The security company issued their own statement. They said they were implementing company-wide reforms, new hiring practices to ensure diversity, mandatory bias training for all employees, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. They thanked me by name for bringing the issue to their attention. I didn't ask for that, but I appreciated it, because it meant other people would know, would see that speaking up works, that companies will change when they're forced to change. My sister's wedding was now just 1 week away. I decided to go back to Riverside Mall. I needed to find an outfit. And I needed to see if things had really changed, or if all the promises were just words. I was nervous as I drove there. My stomach was in knots. I parked in the same lot. I walked through the same entrance. I took a deep breath, and I went inside. The mall looked the same, but something felt different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first. I walked toward the escalator. I rode up to the second floor. I started browsing stores. Within minutes, I noticed it. The security guards were different. There were more women, more people of color. And their behavior was different too. They smiled at customers. They said hello. They weren't lurking in corners watching people. They were visible, but not intimidating. I walked into a department store, the same one where this all started. A security guard was near the fitting rooms. A young woman. She saw me approaching. She smiled. She said, "Good afternoon. Let me know if you need any help." Just a normal greeting, the kind every customer should get. I smiled back. I said, "Thank you." I browsed dresses. I found 3 I liked. I went to the fitting room. The guard wasn't watching me. She was helping an elderly customer find the restroom. I tried on the dresses. One of them was perfect. Navy blue, elegant, exactly what I had been looking for 3 weeks ago. I bought the dress. The cashier was friendly, normal. I left the store carrying my shopping bag. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I walked through the mall, past the spot where I had confronted the guard, past the security office, past all the stores where I had been followed. But this time was different. This time, I was just another customer, just another person shopping on a Saturday. As I walked toward the exit, someone called my name. I turned. It was Sarah. She was walking toward me with a huge smile. She said, "Amira, you came back." I said, "I did. I found my dress." She said, "I'm so glad. How was your experience today?" I said, "Completely different. Normal. The way it should have been the first time." She said, "Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." We talked for a few minutes. She told me the training program was going well, that feedback from staff had been positive, that several employees had privately thanked her for implementing it. She said, "You changed this place. You know that, right?" I drove home that day thinking about Sarah's words, about how one person speaking up can create ripples, can change policies, can protect people they'll never meet. I used to be someone who stayed quiet, who absorbed injustice and tried to move on, who told herself that fighting back wasn't worth it. But I'm not that person anymore. What happened to me was wrong. Being followed, being watched, being treated like a criminal because of my hijab. That was discrimination. That was racism. And it should never happen to anyone. If you've experienced something like this, please know you're not alone. Please know your anger is valid, your hurt is real, and your voice matters. I want you to share your story in the comments. Tell me what happened to you. Because when we speak up together, we're harder to ignore. I used to be afraid of confrontation, afraid of making waves, afraid of being labeled difficult. But now I'm more afraid of staying silent, because silence protects no one except the people doing harm. Subscribe to Revenge Leader for more stories of ordinary people who refused to accept injustice, who stood up, who fought back, who won. They thought I would stay quiet. They were wrong. This story proves that racial profiling by store security is real and devastating. When Muslim shoppers are followed simply for existing, camera footage becomes our strongest weapon. This viral story of a store manager's apology shows why we must expose Islamophobia in retail spaces. If you've experienced bias while shopping, document everything. Your evidence matters. Your voice matters. Justice is possible when we refuse silence. Hit subscribe for more confrontation videos where ordinary people fight back and win. Drop your story below. Together, we end discrimination, one exposed incident at a time. They profile us. We expose them.